Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're stripping away the glossy brochure version of this topic. We're confronting the single biggest, most visceral fear that stops people from even picking up the phone to start this journey.
And it's not the paperwork.
No, not the paperwork, even though that is, legendary.
Or the bureaucracy, or even the challenges of the child who might be coming into your home.
No, it's much closer to home. It's internal.
And it's primal.
It is. It's the question that keeps prospective carers awake at 3 in the morning. And looking at the data here, it is consistently the number one hesitation. It's, I want to help a child in need, but
will I damage my own children in the process?
Exactly.
The guilt factor, it is massive. And honestly, if you didn't have that fear, if you're just sort of breezing into this thinking it wouldn't affect your family at all, I'd be worried.
That's precisely what we're unpacking today. A deep dive into the sons and daughters of foster carers. We've pulled together a stack of sources: the Beginner's Guide to Fostering, guidance on the Form F from Affinity Fostering, and some really heavy-hitting insights from Capstone and Corumba AF. We're going to look at the reality, what fostering actually does to a family dynamic.
And we are going to be honest about it because, I'm the guy who's done it. I'm the heart on this one. I've had to look my own kids in the eye when things were chaotic and wonder, did I make the right call?
And I'm here as the head. I've gone through the regulations, the frameworks, the safety protocols, and I want to explain the safety nets the system has built in, because there are a lot more than people realize, to protect the children you already have.
So what's the mission then?
The mission is to take that paralyzing guilt and replace it with a roadmap. We want to show you how to create a fostering family where everyone thrives, including and especially your birth kids.
Okay, so let's start with that fear. Because it's not just a vague worry, is it? It's a whole narrative we tell ourselves.
It is. You've spent years creating this safe, stable little bubble for your family. You have your routines, your inside jokes, your peace.
Your peace. Yeah.
And now you're thinking about dropping a child who has experienced trauma, who might be, volatile, right into the center of that bubble.
You feel like you're inviting chaos into a sanctuary? I remember when we first started, I had this vivid nightmare that my son was going to feel pushed out, or worse, that he'd resent me for bringing a stranger into his space.
That you're sacrificing his childhood to save someone else's.
Yes, that's the one. It's a heavy, heavy feeling.
But there's a really interesting counter-argument to this in the Beginner's Guide to Fostering. The text suggests that this fear comes from a sort of fundamental misunderstanding of the dynamic. We see the birth child as a victim of the process,
instead of a participant.
Exactly.
That's the shift. That is the light bulb moment. Fostering isn't something that just happens to your kids. It's something they do with you.
Okay, unpack that for me. Because doing it with you sounds nice on a poster, but what does it look like on a Tuesday afternoon when everyone's stressed?
Well, it starts way, way before a child even arrives. The Beginner's Guide talks about involving your own kids from the very beginning, the inquiry stage. For us, it was all about agency. So instead of saying, we're moving your toys to make room, which just sounds like loss.
Right, you're losing something.
You say, we need your help. We need to get this room ready for a friend who needs a safe place to sleep.
It reframes it from losing space to
a mission. Exactly.
You're on a mission.
You have them pick out the duvet cover. You ask them to choose which toys they're willing to share and which are the really special ones that stay put. You'd be amazed at the capacity for empathy kids have. They get it, often better than we do.
And from a social work perspective, my head side coming in, the system actually expects you to have this anxiety.
Really? They don't want confident, greasy parents who've got it all figured out.
No, not at all. I mean, if you went into an assessment saying, oh, my kids will be fine, I'm not worried at all.
They're resilient, nothing bothers them.
Yeah. That would actually be a red flag to an assessing social worker.
Why is that?
Because being worried means you're a conscientious parent. It means you're protective. It means you understand the gravity of what you're doing. And that is exactly the kind of person who should be a foster carer.
Huh. That's actually really reassuring.
If you're not worried about the impact on your kids, you probably aren't paying enough attention to your kids.
Right. But there is a difference between worrying about it and actually living it. I often say that my birth children became the best social workers in the house.
How so? I mean, they're not trained in trauma-informed care.
No, but they connect on a peer level. I can try to be the supportive adult, but at the end of the day, I'm still dad, an authority figure. But my son, he's just another kid. He knows how to play Minecraft. He can break the ice in 10 seconds in a way that would take me an hour.
That's a fascinating dynamic. But before we get to the ice breaking, we have to get through the door. And I want to pivot to the technical side here, the assessment. Specifically, the Form F.
The dreaded Form F. It sounds like a tax audit.
It can feel worse than a tax audit. It is intense. The Affinity Fostering Guidance calls it no stone unturned. They want to know everything. But here's the part that makes people really nervous. As part of this assessment, an independent social worker is going to come to your house and they're going to ask to speak to your children alone.
And this is where I see parents bristle. It feels so intrusive. You think, are they trying to catch us out? Are they going to get my kid to say, I shouted at them once 3 years ago?
I want to clear this up right now. The purpose is absolutely not to find dirt. It's a safety valve. The Affinity Guidance says the social worker is there to assess the emotional atmosphere.
Emotional atmosphere. That's a good phrase for it.
It is. They need to know if the birth children are truly on board or if they're just, parroting what mom and dad told them to say.
From the other side of the fence, I can tell you, that private interview, it actually gives the kids agency.
Explain that.
Well, if my kids are just nodding along during dinner because I'm sitting right there, that's a recipe for disaster down the line. When the social worker talks to them privately, it's a safe space. They can say, actually, I'm scared I won't get to play my video games, or I'm worried mom won't have time for me anymore.
And that's crucial data, because if the social worker hears that, they don't just write fail on the application.
No.
They bring those concerns back to you, the parents, so you can address them. It makes sure the birth children have a real voice, and if they're fundamentally unhappy, the placement just won't work. The system is designed to catch that before a vulnerable child arrives.
It's better to know now than 3 weeks in when everyone is in tears.
Exactly. And looking at the newer Form F guidance, there's even more focus now on the child's needs. And that explicitly includes the needs of the children already in the home.
So let's say you get past the assessment. You're approved. A child arrives. That's when the rubber meets the road. And honestly, the hardest part usually isn't what people think it's going to be.
People assume it's going to be fighting over toys, right? You touched my Lego.
Yeah, and look, that happens. But the real friction point, the deep one, is sharing mom and dad.
Jealousy.
Pure jealousy. And it's so normal.
Yeah.
You could be the most empathetic kid in the world, but seeing your mom reading a bedtime story to someone else, that can sting. It triggers that primal fear of being displaced.
So how do you manage that? Because you can't just tell a kid, don't be jealous. It doesn't work.
No. The Beginner's Guide has some great practical advice on this that we really live by. It's all about establishing routines, but specifically carving out that one-on-one time.
This seems to be the golden rule in all the literature.
It is. And it can't just be family time where everyone's piled on the sofa. It has to be exclusive. For us, it was simple stuff. My wife would take our daughter to her swimming lesson, and they'd always stop for hot chocolate after. Just them.
No foster child.
No foster child, no phones, no distractions.
It reassures her that she hasn't been replaced. It secures her position.
Exactly. And the other big one is preserving rituals. If Friday night is movie night, Friday night stays movie night.
Even if the new child doesn't want to watch?
Even if the foster child hates movies or is having a meltdown, you find a way. Maybe one parent manages the foster child while the other does the movie. You cannot let the foster child's needs, as great as they are, cannibalize the stability of your birth children.
That is such a strong image. Cannibalizing stability.
And here's where it gets interesting from my perspective. That structure, that protection of the birth child's time, it actually helps the foster child too.
How so? You'd think they might feel left out.
They might, in the moment. But foster children often come from very chaotic backgrounds where adults are inconsistent. They need to see what healthy family dynamics look like. They need to see that parents keep promises to their kids, that boundaries are real and they are respected.
You're modeling it for them. By protecting your birth child's space, you are modeling healthy boundaries for everyone.
That connects perfectly to the spare room rule.
Yes. Let's talk about the spare room. This is one of the most non-negotiable rules in UK fostering. You must have a spare bedroom.
And a lot of people think, oh, can't we just bunk them in with our kids? It'll be like a sleepover.
Absolutely not. And I want to dive into the why here, because it's not just about comfort. It's about safer care.
Safer care, a phrase you hear constantly in training.
It is. It's about protecting everyone. From allegations, from abuse, from just overwhelming situations, the spare room ensures that your birth children have a sanctuary, a place where nobody else is allowed to enter without permission.
That was huge for us. My kids are generous, but they need to know that their room is their castle. If things get overwhelming, and they will, they can go in there, shut the door, and that boundary is physical and absolute.
The affinity guidance goes into really granular detail here. It's not just the room. They mention that the social worker will check where you keep your 12, 15, and 18 rated DVDs and games.
I remember that. I had to move my horror movie collection up to a high shelf. I thought it was a bit over the top at first.
But think about why. It's not just about the foster child getting access to them. It's about ensuring the whole home is assessed as a safe environment for everyone living there. It protects your birth children from being exposed to things just as much as it protects the foster child.
And it protects against allegations, right?
Massive point. This is the part nobody likes to talk about, but we have to. Some foster children have experienced abuse. They may act out in ways that are inappropriate, or they might misinterpret innocent play. If everyone has their own room, there's just less opportunity for anything to happen, or even for an accusation to be made. It protects your birth child from ever being put in that vulnerable position.
It sounds strict, but those rules are the guardrails. They're what keep the car on the road.
Exactly. So we've covered the fear, the assessment, the rules. But I want to circle back to what you said earlier about your kids being the best social workers, because the sources really emphasize this. Birth children aren't just bystanders.
No way. They are the unsung heroes of the whole operation. Think about it. A foster child arrives. They're terrified. They don't know the rules. They don't know where the bathroom is. Who is the best person to decode all that?
The other kid.
Right. My son would just say, "Oh, don't worry, Dad gets grumpy if you leave the milk out, but he gets over it." Or, "Here's how you work the TV remote." That peer-to-peer translation is priceless. It just lowers the temperature in the house immediately.
And there's a long-term impact on the birth children, too. The beginner's guide talks about resilience and emotional intelligence.
It's profound. My kids have learned that the world isn't just our little suburban bubble. They've learned that some kids don't have breakfast every morning. They've learned that behavior is a form of communication, that if a kid is shouting, maybe it's because they're scared, not because they're bad.
That is a life skill you just cannot teach in a classroom.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
They're developing a sense of social responsibility that most adults I know don't have.
And it's so important for listeners to know that the agencies recognize this. They support this. Affinity quotes Ofsted reports that explicitly mention that the comprehensive support offered to children looked after is mirrored for birth children.
That's such a key point. You aren't doing this alone. The agency isn't just there for the foster child. They're there for your family, the whole family.
Yes. The supervising social worker is there to check in on your kids, too. They ask them how they're doing. There are sons and daughters, support groups, activity days. The infrastructure is there because the system knows that if your birth children aren't happy, the placement will fail.
It's a team sport, and your kids are on the starting lineup.
So let's bring this all together. If you're listening to this and you're sitting on that fence, worried, what are the takeaways?
I'd say there are 3 pillars we've talked about. First is preparation. Involve them early. Don't spring it on them. Let them choose the duvet cover. Make them part of the mission.
Second is process. Trust the assessment. Trust that Form F. When that social worker wants to talk to your kids alone, don't panic. Welcome it. It's the safety valve.
And third is practice. Protect their time and their space. That spare room rule is your friend. And carve out that one-on-one time so they never, ever feel like they've lost their mom or dad.
That's a fantastic summary. We started this deep dive with a really potent fear. Will I damage my children?
And look, I won't lie, there will be bad days. There will be days when your kid shouts, "I wish we never did this." That happens.
But looking at the sources and hearing the stories, the prevailing narrative isn't one of damage.
No.
It's one of growth.
It's expansion. It's like you aren't slicing the family pie into smaller pieces. You're just baking a bigger pie.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on. We spend so much time worrying that fostering will take something away from our birth children. Their time, their space, their parents' attention.
But what if we've got it all wrong? What if we flipped the script?
Exactly. What if the ability to share a home, a heart, and a life with a vulnerable child is actually the greatest gift you could ever give them? What if it teaches them empathy, resilience, and gratitude in a way that nothing else ever could?
That's the aha moment, isn't it? You're not just raising a foster child. You're raising your own children to be better, more compassionate human beings.
If you want to explore this more, I highly recommend downloading the Beginner's Guide to Fostering we mentioned, or looking up sons and daughters support groups in your area. The stories there are incredible.
And check out the Affinity and Capstone sites for the real nitty-gritty on the assessment process. Knowledge is power.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
See you next time.